Flutes! This week we're back with part 2 of syncopation, but this week we're going to focus on silences along with sounds when it comes to syncopation. If you haven't already, check back to my first video that we did previous to this, where we focused on quarter notes and eighth notes only while reading syncopation. In this video, we will identify different symbols used for silence in music. We will listen to some examples to train our ears to hear accordingly, and we will finish the lesson with some playing examples. Be sure to have your flute ready to play along with me. If you watched the previous video, you'll recognize these pictures that I used to show you what your foot should be doing when you're playing along with the metronome. It's important to get as comfortable with this as you can now that we're starting to add in silences into our music. Many times we tend to overlook silence while reading music, but it's just as important as the sound. Music is both sound and silence used to produce beauty through form, expression, and harmony. For every rhythm, there is a symbol for sound and silence. Let's look at them. In the rhythm tree, we became familiar with the quarter notes and the eighth notes. We learned that it takes 2 eighth notes to fill a quarter note. There are symbols that are equal in length to these quarter notes and these eighth notes, and we call them rests. When we talk about sound in music, we say the rhythm name followed by the word note, like quarter note, which equals 1 beat of sound. For silence, we say the rhythm name again, followed by the word rest, like quarter rest equals 1 beat of silence. These symbols are equivalent to each other in length, but one is sound and one is silence. And this is what the symbols look like. The same goes for eighth notes. This is an eighth note, which gets half a beat of sound. And this is an eighth rest, which gets half a beat of silence. These two symbols are also equivalent in length, but one is sound and one is silence. So the note tree breakdown for quarter notes and eighth notes looks like this. Therefore, the rhythm tree for rest looks like this. Now let's get comfortable with how these rhythms, both sounds and silence, look and sound on ups and down beats using some reading and listening examples. This video will give you 4 beats of preparation, and then I will begin playing while you follow along and listen. Let's look a little closer at this pattern. When you were listening, you probably noticed that there was only one sound in each measure. It won't always be like this, but we are starting out light and we will increase the difficulty as we go along in the video. Step 1 when determining difficult patterns like syncopation is to figure out where the sound is versus the silence. The answer for this example is sound followed by silence for the rest of the measure, and this goes for the whole exercise. After you determine where the sounds versus silences are, step 2 is determining the length of the sounds and silences. The answer for this example is half a beat of sound, followed by a half a beat of silence, followed by a quarter beat of silence, and 2 beats of silence. Let's try another example. First example, we go through our step process to figure out where the sound and the silence is in the music, And also we have to figure out what the length of those sounds and silences are. For this exercise, it begins with silence. Notice that it has the 8th rest symbol at the beginning of each measure in this exercise. That means that at the beginning, when we very first start playing, we must be silent on the downbeats. However, since it's an 8th rest, that means that we're silent for only half a beat, so we must make sound on the upbeat. So as soon as our foot goes in the air, we make the sound, which if you noticed, the very next symbol in this measure is an 8th note. So if we go through our step process on this one, just like we did on the first example, the first thing is determine the pattern. So it goes silence, sound, silence, silence, and that's in each measure. After you determine the pattern, then you must determine the length of each sound and silence. That's step 2. For this one, it goes 8th rest, followed by 8th note, followed by quarter rest, followed by half rest. Now let's move on to some one measure examples where each measure is a little more involved. For this part of the video, I would like for you to join me in playing each example. However, we will determine our sounds and silences and the lengths of them first, and then we will try playing it together. For this example, let's start with our very first step, which is determine what the sound versus silence pattern is. For this measure, it's all sounds. In fact, it has 8 symbols in there, and they're all 8th notes. That means that you're going to play on every downbeat and every upbeat for the entire measure. So after we discovered that it's all sound, step 2 was to determine the length, which is all 8th notes. So now let's try playing it together. Play with me when I count us off. 1, 2, ready, play. Okay, moving on to our next example. Again, it's just a one measure example, and I do want you to play with me, but let's go through our step process first. On this example, step 1, determine the sound versus silence pattern. For this example, it goes sound, silence, sound, silence, sound, silence, sound, silence. Step 2 is to determine the length of the sounds and silences, and for this example, it just goes back and forth between an 8th note versus an 8th rest. And you do that for every beat in the measure. That means that you play every time your foot goes down, but you're silent every time your foot goes up. Let's try it together when I count us off. 1, 2, ready, play. So when you first look at this example, you may think that it's more difficult than it really is. But then once you play it and you hear it, you may think, oh, it's not so bad. Because really all it is just playing on every downbeat. Similar to a quarter note, but we don't play on the upbeat. So we don't play it as long as a quarter note. Okay, moving to our third example. Again, I want you to play with me when I count off, but first let's go through the step process. Step 1, determining the sound versus silence pattern. For this one, it just alternates between 8th rest and 8th notes. So it may look very similar to the previous example. However, this one, it starts with the silence and it follows with sound. To where the last example started with sound followed by silence. Okay, and step 2 is to determine the length of those sounds and silences. For this one, just like the last example, it's 8th rest and 8th note. That means this time you're going to be silent every time your foot goes down, and you're going to make sound every time your foot goes up. Play with me when I count us off. 1, 2, ready, play. So while you're playing with me and we're playing along with the metronome, you may notice that every time you heard the click, we were silent because the click is the metronome, which is the steady beat. And for every downbeat, you hear a click. So every downbeat, you heard the click here because we were silent, and then we made sound in between those clicks, which is the upbeat, which is when your foot goes in the air. You may have noticed in the last 3 examples that we've only been using 8th notes and 8th rests. Let's make it a little more challenging and combine quarter notes and quarter rests along with 8th notes and 8th rests. We will continue using the same step process to figure out our sounds and silences and the length of those. So for this example, step 1, let's determine the sound versus silence pattern. I broke this down measure by measure now that we have 5 measures, and each measure not only is different with our rhythms, but we also add a couple extra pitches in there as well. So for measure 1, the sound versus silence pattern is sound, sound, silence, sound, silence, sound. Measure 2 is sound, 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 silence, silence, sound. Measure 3 is silence, sound, silence, sound, sound, silence, sound. Measure 4 is sound, silence, silence, sound, silence, sound. And finally, measure 5 is silent, sound, silent, sound, silence, sound. That was a little tricky, so we will actually break down each measure for step 2, but after we've broken it down using step 2, we will play it before we move on to the next measure. Then, once we've broken down each measure and tried playing each measure, we'll put it all together at the end. So step 2 is to determine the length of the sounds and the silences. For measure 1, it's 8th note, quarter note, 8th rest, 8th note, quarter rest, and 8th note. So for these examples, I put our little shoes in there to show us where our downbeats versus upbeats are. If you play this with a metronome, it goes like this. Down, up, down, up. Okay, let's try playing it together when I count off. 1, 2, ready, play. Okay, that one was a little tricky, so let's play it one more time just to make sure we have it down before we move on to measure 2. 1, 2, ready, play. If any of these measures are tricky to you and you need a little more time than what I'm giving you on the video, feel free to pause, rewind, and try again until you get it down. But for now, let's move on to measure 2. For measure 2, the pattern goes quarter note, 8th note, 8th note, quarter rest, 8th rest, 8th note. So if you put it to a metronome, it sounds like this. Down, down, up, up. Let's try playing together on my count off. 1, 2, ready, play. Let's do it one more time. 1, 2, ready, play. You may have noticed right away, or maybe once you started playing, that we did change pitches. We moved up to A. So be aware of that with each measure. We're going to change notes. Moving on to measure 3, using our step 2 process, which is determine the length of the sounds and silences. It is 8th rest, 8th note, 8th rest, 8th note, quarter note, 8th rest, and 8th note. Let's try putting that with the metronome. It should sound like this. Up, up, down, up. Okay, play with me on my count off. 1, 2, ready, play. Let's do it one more time to make sure we have it. 1, 2, ready, play. Moving on to measure 4, using our step 2 process, again determining the length of the sounds and the silences. For measure 4, it is 8th note, 8th rest, quarter rest, 8th note, 8th rest, and quarter note. So it sounds like this. Down, down, down. Okay, let's try playing it with my count off. 1, 2, ready, play. Let's try measure 4 again. 1, 2, ready, play. And moving on to our final measure, measure 5, it goes 8th rest, quarter note, 8th rest, quarter note, 8th rest, 8th note. It sounds like this. Up, down, up. Okay, play with me on my count off. 1, 2, ready, play. Let's do this one more time. 1, 2, ready, play. Now that we've broken it down, each measure, both determining step 1 and step 2 process, but also playing each measure by themselves, let's see if we can play it all together. Now this is a particularly tricky syncopated pattern. It's 5 measures of consecutive syncopation, but all written differently. So it's okay if you need to rewind it a few times and play along. The goal is for you to improve with each video. So that means it might take you a couple tries of rewinding and playing again before you get it down. But hopefully by the end of the video, you feel like you have a little bit more understanding when it comes to syncopation. On my count off, let's try playing this whole 5-measure exercise. 1, 2, ready, play. That was pretty tricky. Let's try playing it one more time. 1, 2, ready, play. Even with many years of experience for myself, that took quite a bit of concentration because it was so many consecutive measures of syncopation. So it's okay if you need to do this a few times before it gets comfortable. Don't be afraid to rewind and try again. Okay, we've broken it down, we've discussed the step process, and we've tried a few examples both listening and playing. We're now going to move on to 3 exercises, all that have 15 measures of syncopation, and it's a little bit more than just going up the scale. It's still in G major, so you should still be playing with the same F sharp, E natural, B natural. However, it's going to jump around the staff a little bit. Let's try our first exercise on my count off. 1, 2, ready, play. Again, just like the shorter exercises, the 5-measure exercise and the 1-measure exercise, if you need to rewind and try again, feel free to do so as many times as it takes until you get comfortable. Let's move on to our second exercise. 1, 2, ready, play. Okay, moving on to our final exercise for this video. 1, 2, ready, play. I hope you found this video helpful. Please tell me if there's anything else I can do to help you. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.